Indiana football has moved into the top 5 of the college football playoff rankings, but people are still wondering, can they win it all?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Well, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers, those of you that come back each and every day on your audio podcasting platform, or those of you on the video side on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. We got some Indiana basketball recruiting updates for you coming up on today's show, as we are still working a little bit in the 2025 class, but already starting to move ahead to 26 and 27. Plus, what are the best matchups for Indiana football in the college football playoff? That's going to help us answer the main question today. How can Indiana win the national championship? Or for some people, the question is, can they win the national championship? And a good start to do that is by being the number 5 team in the country. That's right. The latest college football playoff rankings came out last night. Oregon is at 1, Ohio State 2, Texas at 3, Penn State 4, your Indiana Hoosiers up to the 5th ranked team in the country. And if you were able to watch or listen to yesterday's podcast episode, I thought we would be 6. I thought we would be right around there. I didn't think that we would get into that top 5. I didn't think they'd put us in that spot. I did not think they would let Indiana and BYU jump Tennessee, given everything that's happened here. And I just didn't think they would do it. But here we are. We're a top 5 team. And it was interesting because we got a chance to listen to the playoff committee, the chairman speak of the playoff committee, and they asked him a couple of questions about Indiana. And he basically talked about how they took into account the dominance that Indiana has had and the fact that the Hoosiers came off of a big win, probably maybe their biggest win of the year, their most hard-fought win of the year, that's for sure. And BYU did the exact same thing. And so they took that into account for Indiana, and they said, yeah, we believe that they're a top 5 team in college football. And so we're a top 5 team in the AP poll. We're a top 5 team in the college football playoff poll. Now, we'll get to the bracket coming up in just a little bit when we start talking matchups, because Indiana would be the 7 seed in the college football playoff bracket, and they would be hosting Alabama. Yes, how big of a game would that be? We'll get to that in just a little bit. But how can Indiana win a national championship, and are they good enough to win a national championship? I think anybody that has watched this team play, anybody that has taken the time to sit down and watch Indiana football play for 4 quarters in any game this season, you can see that there is enough skill at every position to where they can compete and win a national championship. It's those people that refuse to watch, or those people that refuse to believe it. They refuse to buy in. They refuse to give the credit where it's due, because they can't accept the fact that Indiana is good at football. And so, yes, absolutely, we're good enough to win it all. I think we have a Heisman-level quarterback. I think we have probably one of the best offensive lines in college football. Our 1-2 punch of Ellison and Lawton at the running back spot is going to carry us very, very far. We've got about 5 different receivers that we trust on the offensive side of the football. And then you start looking at the defensive side, where the defensive line gets after the quarterback. The linebackers are extremely disciplined, can drop in coverage, blitz the quarterback, or be a spy if they need to, and they can adjust if it's an RPO play action. They know exactly what they're doing. And Indiana's secondary, the defense, the corners and the safeties, they keep everything in front of them. They don't give up the big plays. And so all of that combined with the fact that Indiana rarely turns it over, Our special teams have been really, really good. And we've got one of the best coaches in college football who makes really good decisions. And the coordinators have been on fire too. I have to give a lot of love to them as well. Absolutely, Indiana's good enough to win it all. And I think you're starting to see the people at the top believe that. Again, you're a top 5 team in college football, one of the 5 top ranked teams. And think about this too. Look at the love that the Big Ten is getting this year. Oregon at 1, Ohio State at 2, Penn State 3, which I don't love, and Indiana at, or Penn State at 4. Sorry, still don't like that. And Indiana at 5. There's one SEC team, Texas, that's squeezed in between there. And then, yes, there's a drop off in the Big Ten, but our 4 best teams are ranked in the top 5 of college football. And we need to let everybody know about it. We need to let the SEC know about it. We need to let the Big 12 know about it. We need to let the ACC know about it, because right now, this is the best conference in college football. And we have not been able to say that for quite some time, because there have not been 4 or 5 really good teams. There's been 1 or 2. There's been 1 or 2. And that has hurt this conference in the past. But what a great year for the Big Ten and teams like Indiana to get good, because you have an expanded college football playoff. The SEC is going to cry. The SEC is going to really be upset when some of their teams are sitting at home, because all of our teams got the bids, and some of these other conferences like the ACC or the Big 12 are going to be multi-bid leagues as well. The SEC is going to be upset. You just be ready for it, because we're going to have a chance to win it all, and some of their teams will not. Their teams like an Ole Miss or an LSU or possibly a Tennessee or a Bama if they lose, or whatever the case, Texas A&M. I mean, there's so many different possibilities here with that conference. Somebody's going to be left out, and they're not going to be happy about it. And we're one of the big reasons, because, again, we're in the playoff, we're a top 5 team, and we're absolutely good enough to win the national championship. You've got Ohio State on your schedule, your biggest game of the year. You've got Purdue, which you still have to take care of, a possible Big Ten championship game, and then everything's in front of you. And we're going to learn a lot about ourselves against the Buckeyes next week. And you've got this bye week to get ready for it, all next week to prepare and get hyped up for Indiana and Ohio State, where most people have this as a win and you're in type of situation for Indiana. If you lose, it gets a lot more complicated. We've talked a ton about that, and we'll continue to do so as the week goes on here and into next week as well. But the question is, if we're good enough to win it, what's going to be our path to get there? And what's our best path to get there? We'll look at the bracket and talk about potential matchups for Indiana in the college football playoff if it were to end today. We'll talk about that coming up next on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is my go-to ticketing app for sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it, they have got it. And either I've used it or I have family members that have used it for all of those different types of events. And right now they've got a new feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to scroll for hours and hours and hours through thousands of different ticket options. Some of my favorite features on the Game Time app, your Game Time Picks. Again, it just makes it easier to save more on sports and all your different events, because it's going to show you the best available seats at every venue for every event, right? They're all in pricing. When you toggle the feature, shows your total upfront, so you know exactly what you're paying when you go to checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for being here and making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. For those of you that are everydayers who come back each and every day, truly making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana Hoosiers. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. I see you and I hear you, man. I really do love every single one of you guys. Whether you're on audio or you're on video, doesn't matter to me. Your support means the world. So thank you so much for being here. And be sure, if you're on audio, to follow the show if it's possible, subscribe to the show if it's possible, turn on those notifications because we post bonus episodes here throughout the month. And so don't want you to miss out on those, especially over the weekend, okay? Plus, for those of you on the video side, turn on those notifications too. Wouldn't want you to miss out either. Be sure you like the video and comment down below. And the best way to help us out is subscribing to the channel. We're growing every single day, and I don't want you to miss out on that. So be sure you hit that subscribe button for me. All right, so we're talking Indiana football, right? And if they have a chance to win the national championship, or if they're good enough to do it, or how they can win it all. And I think it would be silly to not look at a potential path for Indiana, right? We know when the rankings come out, they generate this bracket on how it would look based off the current rankings. And here's your top 15, just to give you an idea of what's going on here in the college football playoff. Oregon 1, 2 is Ohio State, 3 is Texas, 4 Penn State, Indiana 5, BYU 6, Tennessee 7, Notre Dame 8, Miami at 9, Bama at 10, Ole Miss 11, Georgia 12, Boise State 13, SMU 14, and Texas A&M at 15. I gave you a few extra teams just to give you an idea on who is currently outside looking in. And we know that the rankings are not a direct reflection in the bracket. It's confusing. I know, believe me. We're going to have to explain this for years to come, and somebody's still not going to get it. There still will be a fan base. Heck, it could be us that's going to be upset about this because we are a lower seed than our ranking. But the 4 highest ranked conference champions get the automatic buys. And as of right now, based off the rankings, that would be Oregon at 1 out of the Big Ten. That would be Texas at 2 out of the SEC, BYU at 3 out of the Big 12, and Miami at 4 out of the ACC, which that's still a little questionable because SMU is going to have something to say about that. But as of right now, this is what it looks like. Okay, again, Oregon 1, Texas 2, BYU 3, and Miami at 4. Well, you're probably saying, well, Indiana was a 5 seed or ranked 5th in the country. What seed are we? Well, I'll get to that. Ohio State is the 5th seed. Penn State is the 6th seed, right? Those teams moved down because they got jumped by the conference champions. And then there's Indiana, who sits at 7. Tennessee is at 8 because they're below us in the rankings. Notre Dame is 9. They're obviously below us, right? You have Bama at 10, Ole Miss at 11, and Boise State at 12. They're that 5th conference champion, one of the mid-majors that would get in because they're the highest ranked the other 5th ranked highest conference champion. So that puts Indiana at 7th. We'd be a 7 seed. We would be hosting a college football playoff game right here in Bloomington at Memorial Stadium. Now, I do want to make this clear. Teams who are in that first round, right? The first 4 teams get a bye. They won't host. They won't do anything like that. They'll await their opponent. You have the other teams, right? The other 4 games where currently Ohio State, Tennessee, Penn State, and Indiana would all be hosting the first round of the playoffs. Those teams do have an option. I don't know why you would, but you do have the option to host the game, quote, in quotations, right, of hosting in any venue. So you have the chance to go and play this at a bigger stadium if you feel that that's necessary, and a neutral site, whatever the case may be. There's almost a 0% chance that would happen for a big-time school like a Power 4 school, right? Boise, maybe, but I don't know. I don't think you'd ever want to do that, and it's going to take a lot for Boise to try and host a game anyway. So just keep that in mind. You have that option. Again, I don't think that's going to happen very much, but that would mean Ohio State would host Boise State at the Shoe. That would mean Tennessee would host Notre Dame in Neyland Stadium. That means Penn State would host Ole Miss in Happy Valley, and Indiana would host Alabama at Memorial Stadium. Would that be the biggest game we've ever played out of conference? I think so. You could say so because it would be a college football playoff game. Absolutely. But I'm thinking back to some of those Ohio State teams and even some of those Michigan teams and the Penn State teams that have come in here that were ranked really, really high, right? That Indiana has struggled with for most of our lives. But man, you get to welcome Alabama, the brand of the Crimson Tide, into Memorial Stadium. Man, there would not be an empty seat in there. People would be standing outside the stadium with their ears up against the wall just to get a chance to hear what's happening between Indiana and Alabama. Now, this is not Nick Saban, Alabama, but it is still the brand that they bring. It's still the SEC, one of the biggest names they offer, coming to Bloomington. Could you imagine how crazy this town would be if we got a chance to host the Crimson Tide in a college football playoff? But I don't think that's our only option here. I think there are several teams that we could end up seeing in this college football playoff, right? You have a chance to play the likes of an Ole Miss or a Notre Dame or even a Boise State, possibly. If Indiana were to beat Ohio State, we would get up and possibly be that 5 seed, right? We could be in the quarterfinals already, right? If we beat Ohio State and we beat Purdue and then we beat Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, it would suck to not get to host, but you also don't have to play the extra game. You get to the quarterfinals. Those are all played neutral site and from there on, but then you just get to sit back and watch. You get to sit back and watch and see what happens in the quarters and await your opponent, because as it stands right now, Indiana would host Alabama and the winner goes to play Texas, which I don't hate, by the way. I don't hate. I think if there's a team you don't want to play, Oregon is on that list. I think they're really, really good. I think Miami isn't great. They're beatable, but Cam Ward's a heck of an athlete, and he's scary. I don't think I want to play him right now. And BYU is one of those nasty teams where you don't want to get in a rock fight with them because they're nasty and they're going to get you more times than not. So as of now, Indiana would go to Texas. But here's what you have to remember here. This is all going to change. This is all going to change. We have anywhere from 2 to 3 games left in the regular season, plus conference championship games. And the big question there, again, for me is, are they going to punish a team for losing their conference championship game more than what they would reward somebody for winning their conference championship game? They're not supposed to, but I just have a hard feeling, or I have a bad feeling, a hard time believing that they won't do that. We'll figure that out as we get there. That's Indiana's current path. Indiana would host Alabama. We would then go and play Texas in a neutral site. Then if we were to win that, we'd get the winner of BYU, Penn State, or Ole Miss. That would be the semifinals. And then you'd get to the national championship game. And I'll just say this before we move on. That wouldn't be the worst bracket in the world. Bama's beatable. Texas is beatable. BYU's beatable. Ole Miss and Penn State are definitely beatable with our defense that we play. So I wouldn't hate it. You would avoid Ohio State, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Oregon, Miami, and Boise State. Fine by me. Fine by me. Just call the season right now. Just make it a wash. Let's move on. Let's just play the playoffs right now. And I think we would be just fine hosting Alabama in Memorial Stadium. Well, coming up on our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, some Indiana basketball recruiting updates. 2025 still working a little bit, but maybe we've just moved on. We'll talk about that in our final segment coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So Thursday night football, all the games on Sunday, and of course on Monday Night Football as well. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Final segment here on the show. Shout out to everybody being here. Really do appreciate you. Hope you are enjoying today's show, enjoying all the content that we're putting out for you on Locked On Hoosiers. Be sure you follow us on social media at Locked On Hoosiers. And be sure if you're on YouTube, you're keeping up with everything we do. Our reels, shorts, whatever you want to call them. We're also making posts on there. We're having polls that you can engage with. So be sure you've got all that going and that you're following all that for us on the Locked On Hoosiers YouTube channel. And for those of you on audio, again, make sure you've got those notifications turned on so you never miss a new episode. Well, as we transition over to the basketball side of things, I've had some questions on Indiana basketball recruiting. And let's be real, we haven't talked about it very much recently because there hasn't been much to talk about recently. I know that's an unfortunate situation for Indiana, and it just seemed like we went through, oh goodness, a couple of weeks, maybe a month of just misery, right? After you miss out on guys like Harrelson, and you miss out on Reeby, and you miss out on those types of guys. And it's just, and Braylon Mullins, right? That was the big one that we talked with our friend Mark at Locked On UConn, right? It's just, you miss out on those and you just kind of feel deflated. You feel defeated. You feel like you just lost all your momentum and everything you had for that 2025 class. Don't forget, Trent Sisley's still here. Like, Trent Sisley is still in this recruiting class. Now, I'm sure you saw the news, and we have not covered this yet. Adam Howard, right? Adam Howard, the recruiting coordinator, got released, got fired, got let go. The recruiting director, coordinator, whatever his title was. He was a recruiting guy. He was our recruiting guru for Indiana basketball, and he was let go a few days ago, probably about a week or so ago now. And there were a lot of questions around that. I didn't know him personally, but I know a lot of people that did. And I know a lot of people that worked with him. And this seemed to be a very questionable decision. It seemed to be a very shocking piece of news when it dropped about a week or so ago. And people were kind of wondering, okay, was he the problem, or is Woody the problem and just refuses to admit it, right? That's where a lot of people have gone. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. And so, in terms of actual updates on Indiana recruiting, you've got a 7-foot center who is wanting to come and take a visit to Indiana in the 2025 class. He's a center forward. He's 7 foot tall. I mean, the dude could play whatever position he wants to. Leo Curtis is trying to take a visit to Indiana. That's the last update that I have been able to gather. He's taken a couple of visits elsewhere, West Virginia, Arizona State. Nothing too crazy there. He is wanting to get a visit. Indiana's trying to make that work. So that could be a possible late addition to the 2025 class. Also have had a lot of questions on Bryson Tiller, right? As of this episode, he was supposed to commit a few days ago somewhere. November 10th was the date he had selected. He has since pushed that back. All right, Bryson Tiller has pushed that back. He is no longer committing on that day, obviously, but if you just want my honest opinion here, I don't think Indiana's in it. I think we are probably no longer a part of that. I think we may still be in a top 3, top 5 situation, but I think he's pretty much down to 2 programs, and I don't think Indiana's going to be in it. So don't hold your breath on Tiller. If it happens, awesome. That is literally extra bonus, something that you were not expecting, but I just don't think Indiana's in that sweepstakes anymore, which is why I've been saying I believe we've just about moved on from the 2025 class. We're already working in 2026. Heck, we had a 2027 kid on campus this weekend who was watching the Indiana basketball game on Sunday afternoon. So that's where Indiana stands. We have sort of taken our medicine, moved on, understand that we got 1 player, possibly 2 in the 25 class. We're going to have to go and hit the portal. Good news is you do have a relatively young roster right now to where you're only going to lose guys like Ballo and Galloway, where you could still keep Rice and Carlisle and Mbako if you can hold them out of the league. And guys like that, you're not going to lose very many of your players. So hopefully when you have to go to the transfer portal, you don't have to go and find a new starting five. You don't have to go and find 6 or 7 players to fill your roster. That's kind of where Indiana stands as of right now. I don't think there's any threat of losing Trent Sisley because of Howard being let go. I think that's fine. I think he's okay there. And Indiana's got work to do, man. They've got work to do. And it comes down to this every time. We've got to find a way to close. We have to find a way to close. I'm tired of being in the top 5, top 3, top 2, and them going somewhere else. And we've got to find a way to figure that out, whether that's a Woody problem, an Indiana problem, or we're just going after the wrong kids. We got to figure out this thing out because we've gotten burned time and time again for years and years and years. You're tired of it. I'm tired of it. And the people at the top are starting to get tired of it too. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for being here again. For those of you on YouTube, like the video, comment your thoughts down below. Indiana football, too high, too low in the latest college football playoff rankings. What is their best matchup? What's the best path for them to win a national championship? And your thoughts on Indiana basketball recruiting as well. And for those of you on the audio platforms, doesn't matter which one it is, I appreciate you. I really, really do. And really hope you're enjoying the audio version of the podcast as well. So be sure that you are following us on there and have those notifications turned on. Okay. Big episode coming up tomorrow. We're looking forward to that. We're going to have a lot of great content for you as we get into the weekend. I know Indiana's on a bye week for football, big basketball game this weekend. A lot of conversation on that on tomorrow's show. Okay. So until then, stay safe and I'll talk to you later.